I always thought our life was a masterpiece, painted with the vibrant hues of love and trust. Emily and I had been married for 12 years, our home in Seattle a sanctuary of laughter and shared dreams. She was a graphic designer, her creativity spilling into every corner of our lives. Our quirky kitchen tiles, the hand-painted mural in our living room. I worked as a software engineer, my days filled with code, but my nights belonged to her. We were the couple everyone envied, hosting dinner parties where friends marveled at our synchronicity. Yet, beneath the surface, something was shifting, like a fault line too subtle to detect. It started with small things. Emily's phone buzzed more often, her fingers dancing across the screen with a secretive smile. She'd laugh, saying it was a client, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. She began staying late at her studio, claiming deadlines, but her sketches piled up untouched. I'd find her staring out our bay window, lost in thoughts she wouldn't share. I chalked it up to stress, to the ebb and flow of marriage. But doubt, that insidious weed, took root. One evening, I found a receipt in her coat pocket. Dinner for two at La Mer, a restaurant we'd never visited together. The date was a Wednesday, a night she'd said she was working late. I confronted her gently, holding the receipt like a fragile relic. Her face flushed, and she spun a tale of a client meeting, her words tumbling too fast. I wanted to believe her, but her voice lacked the warmth I knew. That night, as she slept, I checked her phone, my heart pounding with guilt. There were messages from Mark, vague, but intimate. "Can't wait to see you again," one read. My stomach churned. Mark was her old college friend, a photographer she'd reconnected with at a gallery event. I'd met him once, his easy charm and sharp eyes lingering in my memory. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in our darkened living room, the mural mocking me with its joyful colors. Emily's betrayal wasn't just a moment. It was a slow unraveling, a tapestry of lies woven into our life. I loved her still, but love was no longer enough. I needed answers, and I needed to understand why. The next morning, I decided to follow her, my heart a battlefield of hope and dread. As I watched her leave, her steps light and purposeful, I knew I was stepping into a story I might not survive. But I had to know the truth, no matter how it shattered me. Following Emily felt like betraying her, a cruel irony that gnawed at me. I rented a nondescript sedan, trading my familiar Prius for anonymity, and trailed her after she left our home. She drove to a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, a place we'd once loved for its cozy nooks. Through the window, I saw her sit with Mark, their heads close, her laughter bright in a way I hadn't seen in months. My chest tightened as his hand brushed hers, lingering too long. They weren't just friends catching up. This was something deeper, something that mocked the vows we'd made. I spent days shadowing her, each moment carving a deeper wound. They met at galleries, parks, even a tucked-away bookstore where they shared whispers over dusty tomes. Mark's presence was magnetic, his gestures deliberate, and Emily leaned into them, her guard down in a way she no longer was with me. I photographed them from a distance, my phone's camera capturing what my heart couldn't accept. Each image was a shard of glass. Her smile for him, her hand on his arm, their silhouettes against a sunset. I wasn't just collecting evidence. I was documenting my own unraveling. At home, Emily was a ghost of herself, her warmth reserved for someone else. She'd hum while cooking, but her eyes were distant, her touches perfunctory. I tried to bridge the gap, suggesting date nights, weekend getaways, but she deflected with excuses. My questions about Mark were met with defensiveness, her words sharp and evasive. "He's just a friend," she'd say, but her blush betrayed her. I began to notice details. Her perfume was stronger, her wardrobe bolder, as if she were dressing for someone new. I dug deeper, accessing her email through a shared laptop. There were bookings for hotels, weekend trips she'd never mentioned. One email from Mark was a poem, its lines dripping with intimacy, referencing moments I wasn't part of. My hands shook as I read it, the words a knife twisting in my gut. I cross-referenced dates with her calendar, her work trips aligned with their rendezvous. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was a deliberate, physical choice, planned with care. I couldn't confront her yet. The truth was a puzzle, and I needed every piece. I hired a private investigator, a quiet man named Paul who moved like a shadow. He promised discretion and results, and I gave him everything: photos, dates, suspicions. As I handed over the file, I felt like I was surrendering my marriage, but I needed clarity. That night, I sat alone in our backyard, the stars indifferent above. Emily was upstairs, oblivious to my torment. I wondered who she dreamed of, and whether I still existed in her heart. The man I'd been was fading, replaced by someone harder, someone plotting a reckoning I didn't yet understand. Paul's reports came in like dispatches from a battlefield I couldn't see. His emails were clinical, but each detail was a wound. Dates, times, locations where Emily and Mark intertwined their lives. They'd rented an Airbnb in Portland for a weekend, claiming separate work events. They'd danced at a jazz club in Belltown, their bodies close in grainy photos Paul provided. Most damning was a video from a hotel lobby, Emily's hand slipping into Mark's as they entered an elevator, her smile radiant with a joy she no longer shared with me. I watched it on loop, each frame etching her betrayal deeper into my soul. I began to see Emily differently, her every action filtered through this new lens. Her late nights weren't about deadlines. They were about stolen moments. Her new earrings, a gift she claimed was from a client, matched Mark's taste in bold, artistic designs. Even her laughter, once my favorite melody, felt like a performance for someone else. I kept up appearances, cooking dinners, asking about her day, but my words were hollow. Inside, I was a storm, rage and grief swirling in equal measure. I loved her, but that love was now a cage, trapping me with her lies. I confronted Mark's life next, scouring his online presence. His photography website showcased moody portraits, many of Emily, her eyes alive in ways I hadn't seen in years. His social media was a curated lie, artsy posts, no mention of her, but subtle hints in captions, like a shared joke only they understood. I found his address, a loft in Fremont, and drove by one night. Their silhouettes moved behind a window, her head on his shoulder. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, resisting the urge to storm in. That wasn't my revenge. Not yet. Paul uncovered more. Mark was married too, to a woman named Clara, a schoolteacher who seemed oblivious to his double life. Clara's social media was wholesome. Family trips, book clubs, but recent posts hinted at strain, her smiles forced. I wondered if she sensed the fracture, as I had. The betrayal wasn't just mine. It was a web, ensnaring us all. I kept this knowledge close, a card to play later. For now, I focused on Emily, on understanding how she drifted so far from me. At home, I tested her, dropping Mark's name casually. Her reaction was a masterclass in deception. Calm words, but her hands trembled. I asked about her Portland trip, mentioning a jazz club I knew she'd visited with him. She froze, then spun a story about a solo night out. Her lies were elaborate now, a house of cards I longed to topple. But I waited, my plan forming in the shadows. Revenge wasn't just confrontation. It was a symphony, and I was composing its cruelest notes, determined to make her feel the weight of her choices. Living with Emily became a performance, a tightrope walk over a chasm of deceit. I smiled through breakfasts, complimented her designs, even held her hand during movie nights, but my heart was a fortress, barricaded against her. She seemed to sense the shift, her eyes searching mine for the warmth I no longer offered. Yet she didn't ask, didn't probe, perhaps because guilt silenced her, or because she was too entangled in her other life. Our home, once a haven, felt like a stage, each moment scripted to delay the inevitable. I immersed myself in work, coding late into the night, but it was a distraction from the obsession consuming me. Paul's updates grew more detailed. Emily and Mark had a routine now, meeting 3 times a week, their encounters planned with the precision of a heist. They'd created a shared email account for their plans, thinking it untraceable. Paul hacked it, forwarding me their messages. Intimate, reckless, filled with a passion that stung like acid. Emily wrote of feeling alive with Mark, words that gutted me. I printed those emails, keeping them in a locked drawer, fuel for the fire I was stoking. I began to mirror her secrecy, hiding my pain behind a facade of normalcy. I joined a gym, not for health but to channel my rage into something physical. My body changed, leaner, harder, a reflection of the man I was becoming. Friends noticed, joking about my midlife glow-up, but Emily barely commented, her attention elsewhere. I bought new clothes, sharper, more confident, and she raised an eyebrow but said nothing. It was as if we were strangers sharing a life, each playing a role until the curtain fell. I met Clara, Mark's wife, under the guise of a community event, a book drive at her school. She was kind, her eyes tired but warm, and I felt a pang of guilt for the storm I'd bring into her life. I didn't reveal anything, just observed, noting her trust in Mark, her mentions of his late shoots. I left with her contact info, filed away for later. Clara was a piece of my plan, though I hadn't yet decided how. The cruelty of my revenge was taking shape, not in violence but in exposure, in shattering the illusions they'd built. One night, Emily came home late, her cheeks flushed, her excuse flimsy. I poured her wine, asked about her day, and watched her lie with ease. I wanted to scream, to shake her, but instead, I smiled, my mind racing with possibilities. I was no longer the husband begging for truth. I was the architect of their downfall. As she slept, I sat in my office, sketching a timeline of their affair, cross-referencing it with my plan. The revenge would be non-standard, a betrayal of their betrayal, and it would leave them both exposed, raw, and forever changed. My plan crystallized in the quiet hours, a mosaic of calculated moves designed to unravel Emily and Mark's world. Revenge wasn't enough. It had to be poetic, a mirror to their deceit, exposing them in ways they couldn't escape. I began by planting seeds, subtle disruptions to their carefully curated lives. I started with Mark, knowing his arrogance was his weakness. Using an anonymous email, I sent his photography clients vague tips about his unprofessional conduct, hinting at personal distractions. I didn't expect immediate fallout, but I wanted him unsettled, his confidence chipped away. Next, I turned to Emily's professional life. She'd built a reputation as a meticulous designer, but I knew her recent work was rushed, her focus stolen by Mark. I created a fake client profile, commissioning a project with an impossible deadline. She took the bait, her emails to me, as the client, frantic, her stress palpable. At home, she snapped at small things, her composure fraying. I offered sympathy, cooking her favorite meals, but my kindness was a trap, lulling her into a false sense of security. Each sigh she let out was a victory, a crack in her facade. I contacted Clara again, this time as a concerned friend of Mark's, using a burner phone. I didn't reveal the affair but suggested Mark was struggling with personal issues, urging her to check on him. Clara's voice was worried, and I knew I'd planted doubt. I followed up with an anonymous note to her school, praising her dedication but hinting at family challenges that might affect her work. The note was vague, but it would make her question Mark's late nights, her trust eroding like sand. At home, I escalated my psychological game. I left subtle clues, a receipt for a coffee shop I knew they frequented, tucked in a book she was reading, a playlist on our shared account with songs Mark had posted online. Emily's reactions were telling. Her eyes widened, her excuses quick but shaky. I asked innocent questions about her day, watching her squirm as she lied. I wanted her to feel watched, to sense the walls closing in without knowing why. My love for her was a ghost now, replaced by a cold determination to make her face her choices. Paul's final report confirmed their next rendezvous, a weekend at a cabin in the Cascades. I saw my opportunity, the stage for my revenge's crescendo. I began preparing, gathering tools not of harm but of revelation, cameras, documents, connections. The cruelty would lie in truth, in stripping away their lies before those they deceived. As I packed my bag, Emily kissed my cheek, oblivious to the storm I was brewing. I smiled, my heart a furnace, and promised her a weekend she'd never forget. The reckoning was coming, and it would be as non-standard as their betrayal, a masterpiece of pain and clarity. The Cascades cabin was a rustic retreat, nestled in pine-scented isolation, a perfect hideaway for Emily and Mark's clandestine moments. Paul's intel was precise. They'd booked it for 3 days, a stolen weekend masked as separate work trips. I drove up a day early, the winding roads mirroring the twists in my mind. The cabin was remote, its windows dark, but I imagined their laughter filling it soon, oblivious to the trap I was setting. My plan wasn't confrontation. It was exposure, a spectacle to unravel their lies before those they deceived. I scouted the property, noting every detail. The gravel path, the back deck, the single road in. I installed tiny cameras, discreet models Paul recommended, hidden in tree knots and under eaves. They'd capture everything, not for blackmail but for truth, a visual record of their betrayal. I tested the feeds on my laptop, the grainy images a preview of their undoing. I also left subtle markers, a monogrammed pen with my initials in their car's glove box, a scarf Emily thought she'd lost tucked in a drawer. These weren't accusations. They were whispers, meant to haunt her with my presence. Back in Seattle, I prepared the next phase. Clara, Mark's wife, was key. I sent her another anonymous note, this time with a photo of the cabin's booking confirmation, pulled from their shared email. The note was gentle, suggesting she surprise Mark for a romantic getaway. I knew she'd go, her trust fraying but not yet broken. I also contacted Emily's closest friend, Sarah, a blunt woman who valued honesty. I posed as a concerned colleague, emailing Sarah about Emily's overwork and odd behavior, planting seeds of doubt without revealing the affair. Sarah's reply was curt but curious, promising to check in. At home, Emily packed for her conference. Her lies polished now, delivered with a smile. I helped her fold clothes, my hands steady despite the rage in my chest. I asked about her plans, watching her falter as she described fictional panels. Her eyes avoided mine, and I wondered if she sensed the noose tightening. That night, I lay beside her, her breathing soft, and felt a pang of grief for the woman I'd loved. But grief fueled my resolve. This wasn't just about me, it was about justice, about stripping away their illusions. As Emily left for the cabin, I finalized my preparations. I'd follow her, not to confront but to orchestrate. Clara would arrive, Sarah would dig, and the cameras would capture it all. The revenge was a puzzle, each piece clicking into place. I drove behind her at a distance, my heart a drumbeat, knowing this weekend would shatter their world. The forest loomed, and with it, the climax of my cruel, non-standard symphony. I parked a mile from the cabin, hidden in a thicket, and watched through my laptop as Emily and Mark arrived. The cameras caught their ease, their laughter as they carried wine and groceries inside. Emily's hair glowed in the sunset, her movements light, as if she'd shed the weight of our marriage. Mark's arm circled her waist, and I clenched my fists, the image searing into me. But I waited, my plan a slow burn, its cruelty and precision, not impulse. Clara's car appeared at dusk, her headlights slicing through the twilight. I'd timed her arrival through the anonymous note, and she'd taken the bait, her face a mix of hope and suspicion as she stepped out. She knocked, and the cabin's warmth spilled onto the porch. Emily's gasp was audible through the camera's mic, her hand flying to her mouth as Mark stammered. Clara's voice was sharp, demanding answers, and I watched the chaos unfold like a director savoring his scene. Emily's lies crumbled, her excuses incoherent, while Mark's charm failed under Clara's piercing gaze. Sarah's role played out simultaneously. I'd sent her a cryptic text from a burner phone, posing as a mutual friend, with the cabin's address and a hint about Emily's trouble. Sarah, ever protective, called Emily mid-confrontation, her voice booming through the phone's speaker. The cameras caught Emily's panic, her hands shaking as she tried to placate Sarah while Clara interrogated Mark. The collision was perfect, 3 worlds crashing, each unaware of my hand guiding the wreckage. I crept closer, staying in the shadows, to witness the fallout in person. Clara's voice rose, accusing Mark of betrayal, while Emily begged for understanding, her words a tangle of guilt and deflection. Mark tried to mediate, but his arrogance only fueled the fire. Clara stormed out, tears streaming, and drove away, leaving Emily and Mark in stunned silence. Sarah's call ended with a promise to talk later, her tone cold. The cabin, once their sanctuary, was now a prison of their own making. I didn't reveal myself. Instead, I uploaded the camera footage to a secure cloud, editing clips to highlight their intimacy. Moments of laughter, touches, whispers. I wasn't done yet. This was merely the spark. The real revenge would come in exposing them to their wider circles, a public unmasking that would mirror their private deceit. As I drove back to Seattle, the night swallowing the mountains, I felt a strange calm. Emily would return tomorrow, her world fractured, unaware I'd orchestrated it all. I pictured her face, the dawning realization that her lies had nowhere left to hide. The cruelty wasn't in causing pain. It was in making them see themselves, stripped of pretense, in the harsh light of truth. My plan was far from over, and its next notes would be even sharper. Emily returned home Sunday night, her face a mask of exhaustion and fear. The cabin's fallout had left its mark. Her eyes were red, her movements jittery, as if she expected the ground to shift again. I greeted her with practiced warmth, asking about her conference. My tone light but my gaze steady. She mumbled about long sessions, avoiding details, but her voice cracked, betraying her. I noticed her phone stayed off, as if she feared more calls from Sarah or Clara. The pen I'd planted in her car sat on the counter, and her glance at it was fleeting but panicked. I kept up the charade, cooking dinner while she showered, her absence a chance to check her bag. Inside, I found a crumpled note from Mark, scrawled in haste. "We need to talk. Clara knows." My pulse quickened, not with shock but satisfaction. Their world was unraveling, and I was the unseen thread pulling it apart. I replaced the note, my hand steady, and joined her at the table. She barely ate, her fork pushing food around, and when I asked about Mark, her fork clattered to the plate. "Just a friend," she snapped, but her eyes darted away, guilt etched in every line. That night, I escalated my plan. Using the footage from the cabin, I created a montage not graphic but intimate enough to wound. Emily laughing at Mark's joke, their hands brushing over wine glasses, their silhouettes on the deck. I sent it anonymously to Sarah, knowing her loyalty to Emily would crack under the weight of proof. I also emailed Clara a still from the video, Emily's smile for Mark a stark contrast to her lies. The email was signed "A Friend," its tone sympathetic but firm, urging Clara to seek truth. I knew she'd confront Mark again, tightening the noose. At work, I maintained my routine, coding with mechanical focus, but my mind was on Emily. Sarah called her that afternoon. I tapped her phone with Paul's help, a legal gray area I no longer cared about. Sarah's voice was furious, accusing Emily of deceit, of hurting everyone. Emily's responses were tearful, defensive, but Sarah hung up, her trust shattered. When Emily came home, she was a ghost, her face pale, her excuses replaced by silence. I asked if she was okay, my concern a blade cloaked in velvet, and she nodded, retreating to bed early. I sat in my office reviewing the next steps. The revenge wasn't just personal. It was communal, a reckoning for all they'd deceived. I began drafting emails to Emily's clients, hinting at her unreliability due to personal issues, sowing doubt in her professional world. For Mark, I targeted his gallery contacts, suggesting his focus had shifted from art to distractions. The cruelty lay in dismantling their identities, piece by piece, until they faced the mirror of their choices. The final act was near, and it would be merciless. The next phase was exposure, a spectacle to match the scale of their betrayal. I'd spent weeks gathering names. Emily's clients, Mark's patrons, their mutual friends, even distant family. Using a secure server, I created a website, its design simple but stark, titled Truth in Shadows. It hosted the cabin footage, edited for impact, alongside screenshots of their emails, their intimacy laid bare without crossing into explicitness. Each clip was captioned with dates, locations, and context, a timeline of their deceit. I included Clara's story, anonymized, to highlight the collateral damage, and a section on Emily's neglected work, her lies to clients. I didn't launch it yet. Instead, I sent teaser emails from a ghost account to key players, Emily's biggest client, Mark's gallery curator, Sarah, and a few mutual friends. The emails contained a single still from the cabin, Emily's hand on Mark's, with a link to the site and a promise of revelations at midnight. I worded them carefully, framing the reveal as a public service, not vengeance, though my heart knew the truth. The emails were untraceable, routed through proxies Paul had set up. I wanted them to sweat, to dread the ticking clock. Emily sensed the storm. She was jumpy, checking her phone obsessively, her emails piling up unanswered. Sarah had cut contact, and Clara's silence was deafening. Paul confirmed she'd left Mark, moving to her sister's. Emily tried to bridge the gap with me, cooking my favorite meal, her smiles forced. I played along, complimenting her effort, but my questions about her weekend were pointed, watching her squirm. She mentioned Mark once, casually, and I noted the tremor in her voice. The pen from her car was gone, likely discarded in panic. I met Paul for a final briefing. He'd tracked Mark's movements. His gallery shows were faltering, clients pulling back after my anonymous tips. Paul suggested leaking the site to local art blogs, amplifying its reach, and I agreed. The cruelty was in the scale, in making their private shame a public narrative. I also prepared a physical element. Printed stills from the footage, mailed anonymously to their workplaces, each envelope marked personal. They'd arrive the day after the site launched, a tangible reminder of their exposure. That night, as Emily slept, I finalized the site, scheduling its release. I sat in our living room, the mural mocking me with its faded joy, and felt a strange detachment. The man I'd been trusting, loving, was gone, replaced by this architect of ruin. I didn't revel in it, but I didn't regret it. Emily and Mark had chosen this path, and I was merely the mirror, reflecting their truth. As midnight neared, I poured a whiskey, my hands steady, and waited for the world to see what I'd known for months. The fallout would be swift, and my final act was still to come. Midnight struck, and Truth in Shadows went live. I monitored the site's traffic from my laptop, watching hits climb as emails spread like wildfire. Sarah was first, her IP lingering on the footage, then Emily's clients, their clicks frantic. Mark's curator viewed the email screenshots, his session long and deliberate. By morning, local art blogs had picked it up, their posts coy but damning, hinting at a scandal in Seattle's creative scene. Social media buzzed, vague but vicious, as friends and colleagues shared the link in private threads. The exposure was complete, their lies a public exhibit. Emily woke to chaos. Her phone buzzed with notifications, clients canceling contracts, Sarah's furious texts, even her mother's confused voicemail. She sat at the kitchen table, scrolling, her face ashen as she stumbled across a blog post linking to the site. She didn't know it was me, but her eyes flicked to mine, searching for answers I didn't offer. "Someone's out to get me," she whispered, her voice breaking. I nodded, feigning concern, and suggested she take the day off. She agreed, retreating to our bedroom, oblivious to the envelopes arriving at her studio. Mark's world collapsed faster. Paul reported his gallery pulling his upcoming show, citing reputational risks. Clients dropped him, and Clara's lawyer served him papers, her resolve hardened by the site's revelations. The printed stills hit their mark. Emily's studio manager called, bewildered, while Mark's assistant quit after opening his mail. Their professional lives, built on charm and talent, crumbled under the weight of truth. I watched it unfold from my office, my code untouched, my focus on the analytics of their ruin. Emily tried to salvage things, calling Sarah. Then Mark, her voice desperate through the tapped line. Sarah refused to meet, and Mark was curt, blaming her for Clara's departure. Their alliance fractured, each resenting the other for the mess. I cooked dinner that night, my calm a stark contrast to Emily's panic. She barely spoke, her eyes distant, and I wondered if she saw the irony. Her secrecy had bred this isolation. I asked about her day, my tone gentle, and she mumbled about misunderstandings. Her lies threadbare now. The cruelty of my revenge was its permanence. The site was mirrored across servers, untraceable and unstoppable. A digital scar they'd carry forever. But my final act loomed, a personal reckoning to seal their fate. I began drafting a letter not to Emily but to myself, a record of this transformation, from husband to avenger. It would be my closure, read only when the dust settled. As Emily slept, her breathing uneven, I stood at our window, the city glittering below. The story wasn't over, but the climax was near, and it would be as non-standard as their betrayal, a final note in my symphony of truth. The fallout from Truth in Shadows was relentless. Emily's studio lost half its clients, her reputation tarnished by whispers of unprofessionalism. Mark's career imploded, his gallery shows canceled, his loft lease terminated. Social circles shunned them, friends choosing sides, most aligning with Clara or me. The silent victim they didn't yet know was the orchestrator. Emily barely left the house, her confidence eroded, while Mark vanished from public view, his social media dormant. My revenge had stripped them bare, but the final act required a personal touch, a confrontation to seal their reckoning. I planned a dinner, inviting Emily's remaining allies, Sarah, who'd softened but remained wary, and a few colleagues unaware of my role. I framed it as a chance to support Emily through her challenges, my tone earnest. I also invited Clara, posing as a mutual acquaintance, suggesting she deserved closure. She agreed, her voice steely, unaware of the full scope of my plan. The dinner would be my stage, the cabin footage my prop, and their shame my weapon. I spent days preparing, my calm a facade masking the storm within. Emily was hesitant but agreed, desperate to rebuild her image. She spent hours choosing an outfit, her mirror reflecting a woman clinging to control. I watched her, my heart a paradox. Grief for our past, satisfaction for her present. I set up a projector in our dining room, disguised as a work tool, its purpose hidden until the moment arrived. The menu was deliberate. Dishes from our early years, a cruel nod to the love she'd betrayed. As guests arrived, I played the host, my smiles practiced, my words warm. Clara's presence shifted the room's energy. Emily froze, her greeting stilted, while Mark, uninvited but lured by a fake text from Emily, appeared at the door, his face haggard. I welcomed him, my hospitality a trap, and seated them all, the tension thick as fog. Sarah's eyes darted between them, sensing the setup, while Clara's gaze was a blade, cutting through their composure. I served wine. My toast about truth and healing met with uneasy nods. The stage was set, and my final gambit was ready to unfold. As dessert neared, I dimmed the lights, claiming a surprise presentation for Emily's career. The projector hummed, and the cabin footage played. Emily and Mark's laughter, their touches, their stolen moments. Gasps filled the room, Sarah's hand covering her mouth, Clara's eyes blazing. Emily's fork clattered, her voice a choked plea, while Mark stammered denials. I stood, my voice steady, revealing my role, not as victim, but as architect. The cruelty was in their exposure, not to the world, but to those they'd hurt most, in the home we'd built together. The dining room became a crucible, the projector's glow casting Emily and Mark's betrayal across the walls. Sarah's face crumpled, her loyalty to Emily shattered by the undeniable truth. Clara's silence was louder than any scream, her dignity a stark contrast to Mark's fumbling excuses. Emily's eyes met mine, wide with horror, finally seeing the depth of my knowledge, the precision of my revenge. I didn't shout or accuse. I spoke calmly, recounting the months of lies, the receipts, the emails, the cabin. Each word was a hammer dismantling their defenses. I turned to the guests, my voice measured but unrelenting. I described Emily's secret trips, Mark's duplicity with Clara, their shared email account brimming with deceit. I played audio from Paul's taps, Emily's voice, confessing to Mark how alive she felt, words that had gutted me months ago. The room absorbed them now, friends recoiling, colleagues shifting uncomfortably. Clara stood, her voice low but fierce, thanking me for the truth before walking out. Her exit a final severing of Mark's world. Sarah followed, tears streaming. Her farewell to Emily a whispered, "How could you?" Emily tried to speak, her voice trembling, but I raised a hand, silencing her. I projected the truth in shadow sight, its analytics showing thousands of views, their shame a digital monument. I admitted my role, the anonymous emails, the planted clues, the cameras. Mark lunged toward me, his face twisted, but a colleague restrained him, his outburst only deepening his disgrace. I didn't flinch. I was no longer the husband begging for answers. I was the judge, delivering a verdict they couldn't escape. The guests left quickly, their goodbyes curt, leaving Emily and Mark alone with me. I turned off the projector, the room dark except for a single lamp. Emily sobbed, her apologies incoherent, while Mark slumped, defeated. I felt no joy, only a cold satisfaction. My revenge wasn't in their pain but in their clarity. They could no longer hide. From me, from each other, from themselves. I handed Emily a folder. Divorce papers prepared weeks ago, and a letter detailing her betrayal, for her to keep as a reminder. I told them to leave, my voice devoid of warmth. Mark shuffled out, his bravado gone, while Emily lingered, her eyes pleading for forgiveness I couldn't give. She whispered my name, but I turned away, the door closing behind her. The house was silent, its walls echoing the life we'd lost. I sat at the table, the dishes untouched, and opened the letter I'd written to myself. It chronicled my journey, from love to betrayal to retribution, a testament to the man I'd become. The cruelty of my revenge was its permanence, a truth they'd carry forever, as I carried the scars of their choices. The days following the dinner were a blur of silence and motion. Emily moved out, her belongings packed in haste, her studio abandoned. She left a note, a single sentence, "I'm sorry for everything." I burned it, the ashes a small release. Mark's loft was listed for sale, his name erased from Seattle's art scene. Clara thrived, her social media showing a new job, a fresh start, her strength a quiet victory. Sarah reached out once, offering condolences, but I declined, needing space to rebuild. The truth in Shadow's site remained online, its traffic fading but its impact enduring. Blogs still mentioned the scandal, Emily and Mark reduced to cautionary tales. I didn't monitor it anymore. My work was done. My own life shifted. I sold our house, its mural painted over, and moved to a sleek condo downtown, its clean lines a blank slate. Work became my anchor, my coding sharper, my focus relentless. Friends praised my resilience, unaware of the darkness that had forged it. Yet the revenge's weight lingered. Late at night, I'd see Emily's face, not the liar but the woman I'd loved, her laughter from years ago haunting me. I didn't regret my actions, but I mourned the cost, the trust I'd never regain, the love I'd buried. I visited a therapist, a pragmatic woman who listened without judgment, helping me untangle the rage and grief. She asked if I'd found closure, and I nodded, though it felt incomplete, like a song missing its final chord. I tracked Emily's movements once, out of curiosity. She'd relocated to Portland, working freelance under a new name, her portfolio sparse. Mark was in Tacoma, teaching photography at a community center, his charisma dimmed. Their lives were shadows of what they'd been, their punishment not in suffering but in mediocrity, a fitting end for their hubris. I didn't contact them. My revenge was final, its cruelty in their irrelevance to me now. I began to live again, small steps at first. I joined a hiking group, the mountains a reminder of my own strength. I dated, cautiously, a woman named Lila whose quiet humor softened my edges. She didn't know my story, and I didn't share it, wanting a future untainted by the past. The letter to myself remained unread, locked in a safe, a relic I'd open when ready. The cruelty of my revenge had been its precision, but its true power was in freeing me, letting me walk away from the wreckage with my head high. Months passed, and the scars of Emily's betrayal faded, though never fully. I stood at a crossroads, my life rebuilt but forever altered. The condo was home now, its walls adorned with art I'd chosen. Abstract, bold, free of her influence. Work thrived. I led a new project, my team's respect a quiet validation. Lila became a steady presence, her patience a balm, though I kept parts of myself guarded, wary of vulnerability. The man I'd been was gone, but the man I was becoming felt stronger, forged in the fire of truth. I reflected on the revenge, its non-standard cruelty a masterpiece of intent. It wasn't about pain but exposure, forcing Emily and Mark to face their choices in a mirror they couldn't shatter. The dinner, the sight, the planted clues, they were strokes of a brush, painting their shame for all to see. Clara's freedom, Sarah's disillusionment, the art world's rejection. These were ripples, proof of my plan's reach. Yet the therapist's question echoed. Was it worth it? I believed it was, not for vengeance but for justice, for reclaiming my narrative. I saw Emily once, by chance, at a Portland cafe during a work trip. She didn't see me, her face thinner, her eyes distant as she sketched alone. I felt no anger, only a detached pity. She'd lost more than I had, her spark dimmed by her own hand. I didn't approach her. There was nothing left to say. Mark's name surfaced in a newsletter, a minor exhibit in a small gallery, his comeback feeble. Their worlds had contracted, while mine expanded, a quiet triumph. I opened the letter to myself one night, its pages heavy with memory. It detailed my love, my pain, my transformation, each word raw but resolute. I cried, not for Emily but for the innocence I'd lost, the trust I'd never fully regain. The letter ended with a promise. To live, not for revenge, but for myself. I burned it, the flames cleansing, and scattered the ashes in the sound, a final release. The cruelty of my revenge had been its permanence, but its gift was my freedom, a chance to write a new story. Lila joined me for a hike that weekend, her laughter filling the forest. I smiled, genuinely, feeling the weight lift. The past was a shadow, no longer defining me. I was no longer the husband, the victim, or the avenger. I was just me, whole in a way I hadn't been before. The mirror of my revenge had shown Emily and Mark their truth, but it had also shown me mine, and I was ready to move forward. A year after the dinner, I stood on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, the wind sharp and alive. Lila was beside me, her hand in mine, our relationship steady but unhurried. The ocean stretched endless, a reminder of possibilities beyond the pain. My revenge was a distant memory, its cruelty a chapter closed, its lessons etched into me. Emily and Mark were footnotes now, their lives irrelevant to my own. I'd won, not by destroying them, but by rebuilding myself, stronger, wiser, free. The condo was a sanctuary, filled with new memories. Dinners with Lila, books I'd read, code I'd written. Work had promoted me, my vision shaping the company's future. Friends, old and new, filled my life, their laughter a contrast to the silence of that final night with Emily. Clara sent a card, thanking me for the truth, her life vibrant now, a family of her own forming. Sarah had forgiven Emily, I heard, but their friendship was a ghost, unable to reclaim its past. I thought of the revenge's non-standard nature, its psychological precision, its public yet personal execution. The cabin cameras, the website, the dinner, they were tools of clarity, not chaos, designed to expose without harm. The cruelty was in the truth, unyielding and permanent, a mirror they couldn't escape. I'd lost my marriage, my trust, but gained something rarer. Agency, the power to shape my story. The therapist called it resilience, but I called it rebirth, a chance to live on my terms. I kept one memento, a single photo from our early years, Emily and me laughing at a festival, her eyes bright with love. It wasn't nostalgia but a reminder of what could have been, and what I'd overcome. I didn't hate her. I felt nothing, a neutrality that was its own victory. The letter's ashes had freed me, its words a bridge to this moment, standing on a cliff with a future unfolding. As the sun dipped, Lila leaned into me, her warmth grounding. I didn't tell her about Emily, not yet, but I would when the time was right. For now, I was present. The oceans roar my anthem. The revenge had been cruel, yes, but it was also just a reckoning that set me free. I turned from the cliff, Lila's smile lighting the way, and walked toward tomorrow. The story of my betrayal was over, but the story of my life was just beginning. Its pages blank, ready for new colors, new truths, new dawns.